Evening, folks. Thanks for coming in. We're a couple of minutes late, but we're still here anyway. Hope you're all doing well. So tonight we are joined by this young lady, hypnotist Rebecca Jackson.
Hypnotherapist.
Hypnotherapist Rebecca Jackson. That's me told right away, isn't it? 1 minute in, that's me told that right away. This is Rebecca's first time on the show, but it's not the first time we've met. Rebecca joined us about 4 or 5 weeks ago for her first ever paranormal investigation at Loudon, Kirk. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. But first we're going to get to know what Rebecca does as a day job, or whatever you want to call it. So it's good to see you again, Rebecca.
It's good to see you too. And we're not in a graveyard. We're in the comfort of our own homes.
I know. We're not standing in a graveyard or sitting in a barn.
It was a nice sunny night when we went to the graveyard, to be fair. So it wasn't like cold or anything.
We got it lucky, as I was saying just before we came on. We were there 2 or 3 weeks ago with Rosie and her mum Emma, and we got about an hour and a half, 2 hours investigating, and then the clouds just opened, basically, just bang down it came like that, so it was a quick dash back to the car, but then it dragged, it went off and we ended up going back, what have you. But so Rebecca is a hypnotherapist, as you just told me. So tell us about the hypnotizing, you know what I mean?
Hypnotize. So the reason that I interjected there is because I think when people think of hypnotists, they think of like the stage, like hypnotherapist, and like I think stage like hypnotism is really impressive, right? And that's what intrigues me about it. But I also think for some reason it scares people and it makes people think it's kind of like magic and brainwashing. So stage, like when you're hypnotized on the stage, it's really just about suggestion. It's about looking, the performer will find someone that looks kind of extroverted, get them up, essentially use what are called rapid induction techniques to kind of confuse and disorientate them, like almost like give you a shock. So when you've got a shock, and then when you say something like sleep, you don't actually fall asleep. You're just so suggestive that you do what you're told and you go like that, right? So when people think of like hypnotherapy, they think, or being hypnotized, they think, oh, you're going to make me do the funky chicken, you're going to ridicule me. And it's not that at all. So hypnosis is a deep state of relaxation, and all of us go in and out of hypnosis many times a day. So we go into a state of trance when we're walking a regular route, when we're driving, when we're watching TV. We go into a very deep state of hypnosis just before we fall asleep and when we wake up. And when you're in a state of trance, that's when your conscious mind. So your conscious mind is the mind that we're using right now to talk to each other. It's the mind that chats away, chat. And your subconscious mind, which is actually 90% of your overall mind, so it's most of our makeup, but we're not even aware of it, come together and focus. And so it's a really powerful form of therapy, right? Because, if you want to stop smoking or lose weight, whatever it is, or if you've got trauma, all of that happens in the subconscious mind, right? That's where our addictions, impulses, our creativity, our memories are. So a good example of the subconscious mind working without you realizing it is if you drive, right? So if you're driving, when you first learn to drive, you're really thinking about it. But once you learn to drive, you're not thinking turn left, turn right, indicator, clutch, brake. No, you're not thinking about that at all. You're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, that argument you had the other night. So who's driving the car, right? If you're not actually thinking about it, that's your subconscious mind. That's how it works. The problem is it works the same way. If you ever sat in front of a plate of biscuits, you're not even hungry, and before you know it, you've eaten the whole plate, and you're like, why did I eat that? That's because it's your subconscious mind, right?
Because they're there for you.
It's exactly. And the thing about the power of using hypnotherapy is that you can tap into that side of yourself. You can reprogram it to align with the things that you want to change in your life. It's also very powerful for trauma, right? Because trauma is memories that live in the body. A lot of the things that have damaged, we've all got many levels of trauma and many crises that have happened all throughout our life, but we forget those things, but our body remembers it. And it can influence how we behave around people, how we respond to things, because it's our body, right? So if you get somebody nice and relaxed, you can tap into memories that they've maybe forgotten about, bring them to the surface, kind of forgive and release those memories. So I think hypnotherapy is the future of therapy. There is no therapy without integrating the subconscious mind. All therapeutic practices in their own way are using the subconscious mind, just in a different way. And so hypnosis is when you essentially use powerful words, imagery to get someone really relaxed. It's the same mind state as meditation. So if anyone meditates, it's a deep state of relaxation and focus. And so you're not asleep, you're just very cozy and relaxed. And then in that state, that thinking mind switches off, and then we can get to all the good stuff and flesh it out. And of course, that's where the fun can come in, because I believe that we can access past lives in our memory, in our subconscious mind as well. And so I do past life hypnosis as well, where you take people, you get people relaxed and you take them back to a memory of one of their past lives. And it's pretty amazing what can come up in that space, because people will come up with very accurate times in history, names, dates, places, different people, you know.
We've spoken about past lives before as well. Laura says Laura was raised that night.
Hi, Laura. Oh, hi. Nice to see you again.
Hi there. And just a couple of things you said there. I was going to ask you about, talk to you about. The first one was the stage hypnosis. Now, years ago, long time ago, me and my friend went to see, I can't remember the guy's name. He was a famous hypnotist. They used to do it. It was either the Pavilion or the King's here in Glasgow. Powers or such. I think his second name was Powers. Laura might remember him. But he used to be, so one night, me and my friend went to see this guy, you know. And he says, you know, anybody wants to come up on stage. So me and my mate, we went up. And we were sitting side by side, and he'd done that sleep thing.
Yeah.
You know, but and my mate's head kind of went, you know, but I was sitting there just kind of looking about. So there was a few didn't work. So he says, right, you know, you just go and sit down.
Yeah.
So he had my mate doing all these different things, and then he says, you know, right, wake up. And then my mate came back to his seat. So I says to my mate when he came back, I says, so what happened? He says, what do you mean? I says, when you went to sleep, he says, I don't know. I says, you were up doing, he says, what was I doing? I says, look, you were up dancing and stuff. He says he couldn't remember a single thing about it.
That's what scares people about hypnosis, but it's also like, it's called so when you're a hypnotherapist, you do induction techniques, which is to get people kind of just sleepy and relaxed, but you can do rapid ones, which is just kind of shocking you. And that can jolt you into a kind of half sleep, half wake state. But obviously, like, you know, it's to do with the technique as well. So he didn't master it on you, because I don't really do rapid induction, but you have to be really confident, and you've got to get the moment just right. Like, they'll grab your hand, something, and they'll shock you, and if it doesn't work, they've lost you, because they need to have an authority over you for it to work, because that's what makes you suggestive. But that's also another misconception, is that lots of people go, I'm suggestive or I'm not suggestive, but actually everyone is suggestive. We all go into a state of hypnosis just before we fall asleep. And if you want to do things like manifest, by the way, best time to do it is just before you fall asleep, because your subconscious mind is like a portal that's wide open. So you literally, like, your brain will take on any affirmations or anything any intentions that you set are going to go in on a really deep level. And the subconscious mind is connected to our body. Our body has an energetic body, right? Our energetic body is attached to an infinite web of timeless situations and people. But be very conscientious before you go to sleep about what you're thinking about. If you're worrying about a meeting the next day or what things you have to do, you're perpetuating that, because you're literally wiring anxiety into your subconscious mind. You're going to wake up feeling stressed. So the next day starts the night before. And also, you know, I put my hand up, I'm bad for this. If you're someone that likes to listen to things before you go to sleep, mindless rubbish, like, it's going to go into your subconscious mind, which is why I think it's funny that people say, oh, you're going to brainwash me. And I'm like, you do realize when you're watching TV, when you're watching the news will repeat headlines 10 times. Why? That's what we do as hypnotherapists. We repeat the same thing over and over again. You are strong, you are confident, you are bold. We say it again and again and again. So it goes in the subconscious mind. News repeats the headlines. Adverts repeat the lingo or whatever, right? Because they're hypnotizing you. It's quite simple. And imagery, everyone knows what the McDonald's sign is. Everyone knows what the Apple sign is because they know the power of imagery. If you see it everywhere, it goes in on a subconscious level and it informs your decision about where you're going to eat and what you're going to buy. So we are always being conditioned by our environments. And that's why hypnotherapy is powerful, because you're taking control of your own mind and what you're choosing to put in there. And it's the things that you want for your life, you know?
So when he turned and says, I can't remember, kind of thing. And the two of us were always, we grew up together, we were more like brothers and anything else, but two of us were always winding each other up. So I was kind of 50-50 whether he was actually just winding me up or not, you know, saying he couldn't remember.
Oh no, he won't have remembered if he went into that state of hypnosis.
So I started winding him up. Because you see, now what happened? I says, you took your trousers off and you were dancing about the stage. And he believed me. He didn't really, he was dancing, but he was fully clothed. But I thought, you know, if you can't remember, I'm going to have a wee bit of fun with you. I'm going to tell you what they kind of daft things.
But don't you think that's like so impressive? I'm like, people find it scary. I think it's so impressive. I'm like, if someone can do that with the power of just words, that they can have tactics to get you into that state. Think about how powerful your mind is, you know, and think about what you could do, the possibilities of your own life, if you could actually have more control and charge over your mind, you know? So to me, I'm like, it's not magic. It's something we all have access to. It looks very impressive, but it tells us there's so much more to our minds and our bodies than we realize. And like the possibilities of what we can do with that space is infinite. And obviously for me, I like esoteric things. I'm like, you can explore past lives. You can speak to past people who've passed on. You could speak to spirit, right? You know?
Laura's a question. I was going to ask you that as well, because I say it worked on him, didn't work on me. So why does it work for some and no for others? Are they a stronger mind or?
No. It's to do with the technique that, like, whenever you're on a stage and there's a big audience, you need somebody who looks open and who looks relaxed. So they're deliberately picking out people that they can tell body language wise are going to be a bit more open and relaxed and therefore suggestive, and they can capture them. So that's maybe what it was for you, is that you were going up on a stage, weren't quite expecting it. But I'm sure you could go, if you really wanted to be hypnotized like that, like in a stage way, you could go to different people and they will manage to do it on you. He just didn't quite get in there at the right time, the right moment, because there's a very specific way of like hypnotizing people in that way.
And it's annoying me what his name was. I can't. He used to be Glasgow all the time. I was Powell or Powers, or I cannot remember his name. But he was quite. I don't know if he's still doing it, but it was quite big back. I think it was in the 80s and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's impressive. I mean, it's like, you know,
it is impressive, but because it didn't work in me, that sort of put the old fake thing into my head. You know, thinking, well, is this guy the real deal, or are these people just? Because there was, you get the usual stories. Everybody, Peter Powers. Thanks very much, Laura. There you go.
Yeah.
Peter Powers.
Yeah, no, it's definitely real. It's definitely real, but it's also like I said, I think it gives people a misconception of what it is, because hypnotherapy is very different to that. You're much more alert. Yes. You know what's going on. You're in the room, you know.
And what you were saying about the, like you're saying about the driving and stuff, you don't think brake, clutch, indicator kind of thing. And
yeah, that's your subconscious mind. That's your memory driving the car, right? So our subconscious mind is 90% of our mind. Like, to me, that's wild. So everything that you think is you and I think is me, and us having this conversation, that's just 10% of who we are. So there's this mighty machine, this force behind us that's running the show. And the thing is, that's why it's so hard to crack addictions, right? Because you can think, I want to stop smoking, or I don't want to eat those biscuits. But if you've got a 90% at the back of your mind, well, that's what we're going to do. That's going to crush any intention or will you have, which means there is no changing of habits without integrating the subconscious mind, you know?
Because there was many years ago, was a time I went through a wee phase that I would, drive home from work, kind of basically, and it was like a 10, 15-minute drive. I'd get home, but I'd forget about driving home. I couldn't remember the drive home.
Yeah, because you're in a trance. That's another thing that trance does. We'll all know it. You ever lost track of time and you've gone, oh my God, an hour has passed? That's because your brain is in a state of trance and you lose concept of time.
I actually went to the doctors because some people say you must be losing it, blah blah blah. So I went to see a doctor and I said, what? I'm not forgetting stuff, but I forget driving home and that. And you know what he says to me? Stop smoking. That was his advice.
Stop to drive home. I mean, you should stop smoking, and hypnotherapy helps that, but I don't think it's going to make a difference.
No, that was that. I remember coming out of the doctors just thinking, stop smoking. What's that going to do with me forgetting to drive home? You know what I mean?
No, Loris, you're in a trance. My mum did night shift 25 years and many times can't remember getting. Of course not, because you're in autopilot mode. You know, we all do that. We sleepwalk through the day. We go autopilot when we're doing our routines. When you get up, you have your shower, you make your coffee. We forget it all, don't we? Because it's so routine. It's a reflex that we're not really doing it. But this is the thing, is that we can become at the mercy of our own routines, of our own lives that we're unhappy in. You know, it becomes so wired into our brains. Get up, do this, go there, go there. And before we know it, we're sleepwalking through life and going, why is nothing changing in my life? Why do I never get the things done I want to do? Because doing something new, whether it's writing a book or setting up a YouTube channel, whatever, is you have to reprogram your subconscious mind. It's uncomfortable. It requires energy. It's difficult because you're programming in a new pattern. But then once you do it, your life changes. So we do become a slave to our own wiring. And I think we're hardwired by the time we're 35. Mm-hmm. So your brain's a bit more malleable, but you can literally at any age rewire your brain. It's just that kind of Groundhog Day routine can be. Five. So yeah,
it's like what you were saying there about the going to sleep. But I've said this to say a few times. I call it limbo. You know, how you lie in your bed and you're not awake, but you can feel yourself just sort of drifting. It's hard to describe, you know.
That's limbo state. It's called a hypnagogic state of mind. That's the name for it. And it's exactly that. You're half awake, half asleep. Basically, what's happening is your thinking mind's switching off, your body's switching off, but your mind's you're still on and on. Such a powerful state of mind. You can have out-of-body experiences in that state. You can have psychic premonitions in that state. You can set very powerful intentions in that state. And you can ask questions. So if there are questions that you aren't sure about in your life, that's a good time to ask it. And the answers will come up in your dreams, or when you wake up, it'll be the first thing that comes to you. And when you ask questions, don't ask why or should, because the subconscious mind doesn't like that, because it's a pressure question, right? So you could be like, show me what's standing in the way of me making more money, you know? And then you might have a dream that's a memory from childhood and it's pointing you in the direction of, you might just wake up and suddenly have it's the first thing that comes to you before you move your body. It might be like, it might name something and you're like, that's what I need to do. I need to go for that promotion, you know? So it's a really good way to tap into the wisdom that is you, because you do have all the answers you need. They're just deep within us. That explains a lot with Sarah. We are sleepwalking through life. We're all sleepwalking through life. Life is just a dream, as they say, you know.
Life is just, what was that song?
Life is a dream. It's a dreamlike state, isn't it? You know, like
just what you were saying there about, you know, when you wake up and sometimes you might get the, you know, you ask what's standing in my way and you get the answer. I've spoken with this on quite a few shows, right? And what I've said to people, there's everybody at some point in their life, something happens, you know, a problem, an issue, whether it's money or relationship, whatever it might be, and there might be some kind of, take money for instance, you know, say you've got a bill to pay and it's to be paid by, you know, the 30th of the month, and you think there's no way I can pay this bill, you think, and then at the very last minute, you know, the midnight hour, an answer comes to you.
Yeah, that's the genius of the mind. Because our minds are very active at night and in the morning. So you always get people saying, I'm most productive in the morning, or you get creatives that are like, that's when I make music, I write at night. But actually, whether you're a morning or a night person is irrelevant, because our minds are so active. That's when our minds are, and of course in the subconscious mind's open, that is where the creativity lives. And that's so good time.
I've spoken to a few people about it, and one theory I had was that just touching the spirit subject, I know we're coming to Loudon in a wee while, but that is, we believe spirit's always around us, they're always keeping an eye out, but they don't interfere, and my theory is, my belief, whatever you want to call it, is that when we're at that last stage that we need to do this, we need to pay this bill, that's when spirit decides to, I'm going to give you a little nudge.
Yeah. Oh, what do spirits do that for you? Like, this sort of like, they kind of help you out of it?
You see, that's the thing, we don't know. It's just a theory of mine, and I've spoken to a few people, and they've agreed with me that, spirit, whether it's your mum, your dad, whoever it is, there's always somebody watching you. But
absolutely, always.
They're not allowed to interfere. But when they see you in dire straits, that's when they decide, right, I'll give Scott that wee nudge just to help him, because they know the answer.
Story like that. Everyone has a story, don't they? Where they're like, if I'd left, 10 minutes later, or like, I don't want to lower the tone, but like, my brother had an incident like that recently with someone who was in trouble, and he just had this beat of like, I need to go back into the flat because I forgot, his friend had forgotten a hat, and they went upstairs, and unfortunately their friend had a fit. And if they hadn't left that hat and come at that point, who knows what would have happened. And to me, I'm like, some people say, oh, how lucky is that? I don't. I think that's a miracle. I think that's a nudge, just like you said, a nudge going, you need to go back. You need to go back home right now. They don't know what it is, but
see, I've got a story that relates to me, but I'll tell you I've got two comments for Laurie to put up. That happened to Craig, and I had been left with nothing because of benefit mix-up. I went to a field where Scott's house is now, and I prayed for help. By the time I got home, there was £100 in an envelope through the door, no name, nothing.
I love that. You know what? When spirit gives you money, bring it all in. Like, that's the kind of nudges you want. What I don't like from spirit is when they give you a warning. I've had a few of those. Have you had those, Scott, where you just get an intuition, a sense, a sign, and you know that something bad's going to happen, and then something bad does happen, and I'm like, why did you warn me about that?
It's funny.
With £100 in it, please. Like Laura.
That'd be a nice wee surprise, the envelope. But it's funny you say that, because, as I said before, I used to drive the trucks for many, many years, and honestly, she can't explain where the envelope came from.
That's a miracle. Like, I believe in magic and possibility. It's always.
As see, I wrote in, as before the seatbelt law came in, I never ever wore a seatbelt, because one of my friend's mums, she was killed in a car accident. The car went on fire, and the seatbelt jammed. And they say, she managed to get the belt off, she would have survived. But I never ever wore a seatbelt. There was one day, I'd been delivered in Carlisle, and I came out of Carlisle, and I pulled in this wee lay-by for my brake, like I always did. And it was a transit van I was in. And so I was sitting eating my sandwiches, having my break, but something kept telling me, I've told it, Laura's probably fed up hearing this story, I've told this to many people, something kept telling me in the back of my mind, put your belt on. And, I caught a wee inner voice, but it kept going on and on. So I put my belt on, and I set off for Glasgow. I was about 30, 40 miles from Glasgow, and ended up with the back of a queue in a contraflow. There was roadworks. And it was a bright, dry, sunny day. So also I pull up beside the car, behind the car in front of me, and seconds later this other van went right into the back of me. The police said he was doing about 70 miles an hour when he hit the back of the transit was destroyed, the engine, everything was demolished, and it shunted another 5 cars. That's how big the impact was. I hurt my shoulder and all down here, but the police had said that if I hadn't been wearing my belt, I would have been through the windscreen.
I mean, it's that intuition. You just know it's something. And the thing is that if you actually, instead of going, that was nothing, what was that? You shut it down. But as soon as you open yourself up to it and go, well, maybe that was a voice from spirit. Maybe I did see something. Maybe that was it. And you guys know this, being ghost hunters, right? As soon as you open yourself up to it and stop going, no, that wasn't anything, and shutting it down, you shut it down. But if you start going, oh, maybe that was something, or was that, and you actually open yourself up to it, and you start to get more and more mystical experiences coming in. You chose to shut that voice down. Why would that voice come back to you to help you out again? You know what I mean?
I just kept going, and people, my boss and family and what have you, you know, after my boss, he came down and picked me up, and I was quite famous for not wearing my belt, you know, and everybody that I knew says to me, why were you wearing your belt? Because you never wear a belt. Why did you? I said, I don't know. And I told them what happened.
You should wear a seatbelt, to be fair.
And I wore it after that. Now obviously it's law, but this is how long ago it was. This was pre-seatbelt law days, you know, so it was optional then.
Gosh,
and people kept saying, why were you wearing? You never ever wear your belt.
Yeah.
We're glad that you did wear it, but I don't know. I cannot explain it because
but you know what it was. It was a source, something greater than yourself was coming into you in that moment and seeing something that was coming in, you know. And if you open yourself up and to that voice will come back stronger and guide you throughout life, you know. Like, listen to the nudges, because you never know where they're going to lead you.
Well, that's it. That's how I always believe it. As I said, you know, previously, about if you've got a dilemma or a problem, whatever it might be, you know, and eventually spirit will step in and give you that wee nudge, you know. So what got you into the whole hypnosis thing to start?
I absolutely believe in the power of the mind and the body to heal itself. So we talk about, you know, miracles, like you had a seatbelt. I believe in miracle healing. I don't think we research it and explore it enough. And I find things like the placebo fascinating, right? So we know in science that the placebo is real. Before any drug goes to market, they have to give people a sugar pill and the real pill to determine if it works. Why? Because people take the sugar pill, believe they've been given the real thing, and they heal, even though they've had no medicine. Our bodies can heal itself. And so I wanted to tap into that part of the mind that does that. And I believe it starts with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is connected to the body. I believe in the power of intention, the power of belief. I'm not sort of saying use it. I've heard a lot of miracle healing stories through hypnosis. So one thing I've seen a lot as a hypnotherapist is people who smoke, right? Very commonly used for smoking. It's the most effective form of stopping smoking. That's been proven in scientific studies. And I've had people who smoke 40 a day for 30 years, don't really want to stop, throwing a bit of money at hypnosis just to show that they're doing something, come in, a 90-minute session, they walk out, they never smoke again. And to the point, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
How just being in a state of relaxation changes something, but it shows me that there's something very powerful there, and it's not magic. It's something we all have access to, you know. And so so that's what I wanted to explore, was how can we use hypnosis to empower our lives and change things, but also heal ourselves from trauma. And I also like the idea that you can then use the mind to explore things that go beyond this existence as well, you know. I think
do you think with this might sound nuts, you know, but sometimes I get nutty theories anyway. Laura and Sarah will tell you.
There's nothing that's too nuts for me. Like, anything.
The smoking thing, right? You know, I mean, I'm a smoker myself, but just smokers in general, you say a 90-minute session and they never smoke again. Do you think maybe that is because, you know, they're in your, I was going to say studio, they're in your, I don't know what you call it, office, whatever.
Yeah.
And they've shut everything else out and they're giving their mind a chance to speak to them.
Absolutely. I think that is what
that makes sense.
It's the power of, we're always in a heightened state of stress all the time. I don't think we realize how much we're at the mercy of our monkey bodies. Like, we have stress responses so that we can fight a tiger, so that we can run from a tiger, so that we can hunt, we can provide and protect our family. because we're animals, but we're also spiritual, sentient beings in a body, you know what I mean? And it's like we're always at the mercy of our stress responses, and stress like I believe that the root cause of like all diseases, it goes back to stress, it goes back to emotions, right? Yes, smoking's going to kill you, so is drinking, but what's driving you to drink and smoke and eat in the first place? Probably some underlying emotion, probably that comes from stress, right? So yes, I do think there's something very powerful, because sometimes for many of us, we can be in a heightened state of stress all the time, that it's just a baseline normal for us and we don't even realize it. And then we get in a chair, we sit down, we imagine we're in a beautiful garden or on a beach, and suddenly we relax. That's why we like going on holiday, because we switch off. We go and sit by a pool, lie on a beach, and it's like peace. But you don't need to sit by a pool. You don't need to go to a beach. That peace lives within you. And we should all connect to that side of ourselves, because that's where your real vitamins are. That's where your goodness and your health lies, you know?
You see, I'll get two comments about Phil. I'll stick Laura, step up in a second. I used to do it when I drove the trucks. I used to do up north quite a lot. And Glen, I was always up and down through Glencoe, you know, and Glencoe's beautiful. No doubt you've been through Glencoe yourself.
Amazing drive.
And I used to park up there and just sit, you know, and there's sometimes in Glencoe, sometimes of the day where you just sit and there's not a sound, no cars passing, no wildlife, nothing. And I used to just sit there, and it was great just to recharge.
Yeah.
You know, and even 10, 15 minutes.
Absolutely. That is recharging. Think of it as a battery. You're recharging your body. And like, that's why people meditate, right? Hypnosis is meditation. It's just that meditation is guided and goal oriented. Meditation is all about being present, right? We're always in the past or in the future. We're always thinking about, oh, I'm going to go and make a coffee in 5 minutes, or I've got that meeting, or why did that person say that to me yesterday? We're never actually in the now. And the only way really to get into the now is to go into your senses. So if you struggle to be present, focus on your 5 senses, go straight to closing your eyes and just listening. Listen to the sounds around you. Rub your forefinger and thumb together and just feel. Just take a moment for you can just set a timer on your phone for 1 minute and just feel the sensations in the tip of your finger and the tip of your thumb, and listen. And don't worry, your mind's you're gonna think. Nobody stops thinking. That's our animal mind. That's how we work. But every time a thought comes up, just go back to feeling the forefinger and the thumb. Go back to listening to the sounds.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to set later on.
It's a challenge. Do it. Set a timer on your phone. If you can't meditate, set a timer on your phone for 60 seconds and challenge yourself to do it 5 times a day. So 5 minutes, but 5 different times, just for 1 minute. And you're going to think, don't worry, but every time you think, just keep going back to listening and feeling, and do it for 1 minute. You're training your mind. Your mind is like a wild beast. It's a wild herd of horses, your thoughts, and you're training it. You're taming the beast. You're bringing yourself back into your body. And there's science to back this up. Your nervous system calms down. You release dopamine, you release serotonin, you release oxytocin. These are all the good stuff. Your body starts to harmonize. And in that state, we heal. Our body heals. Our bodies.
I'm going to try that.
Your hand will heal itself. Our bodies are made to heal, but we've got to get out of the stress responses, you know.
There's a scientific experiment on that where so many are given a placebo and others given the real thing. The guy given the placebo was afraid of crossing bridges, but through suggestion and encouragement, he was able to cross bridges and was amazed when realised he was taking the placebo. In fact, I think it was a Darren Brown investigation.
It's amazing. But like, so this is a bit negative, but have you heard of the nocebo?
No.
So the nocebo effect is the opposite to the placebo effect. Like, there's been people who've been wrongly diagnosed with like a terminal illness, been told that they've got a month to live, and then they've died a month later, and then realize that they've got the scans mixed up and that person wasn't ill at all. But because they were told by medical professionals, you've got a month to live, they died. If people tell you you're sick, and that's why your words are powerful, right? So if you say, I've got arthritis, oh, my arthritis, Words are spells. Don't say my arthritis, say the arthritis, the back pain, the IBS. Don't identify anything, illnesses with you. Try and find a way of using the power of words to disconnect yourself from that illness. It's not you, it's not a part of you. If you think it's a part of you, why would it leave you? Your body's always, the cells in your body are listening to you constantly. And if you can, if a belief can make you better, well, guess what? You better believe a belief can make you sick as well. You know, you have power over your body.
So that's one of my dad's friends. I not comment for Laura. I was saying, years and years ago, one of my dad's friends, he was coughing up blood. He was out to England. He'd been coughing up blood. So when he went home, went to the doctors, and the doctor says you've got 6 months to live. Basically, you're buggered. You know, time's up. But it was about 6 or 7 years later, he came up to visit, and he was running about playing football. And I remember seeing him.
They should study people like him in science. Like, we need to study these people. Because so what do you think that was? Like, how can somebody who's been given 6 months to live be fit and healthy and doing football 6 years later?
Because I remember saying to him, his name was Dave. I still remember it. And I said, should you not be dead? He says, that should have been dead years ago. I said, but I'm still here and I can't explain it.
Who knows? But like, you do, we the thing is, obviously we need, like, do not get me wrong, I believe in Western medicine. It's an amazing time in history to be sick. We've got great advances in medicine, right? It's just that the problem is that we are so at the mercy of, if you're told something, if you're told you need this pill, or you're told you're sick, that's it. It's in our minds. That's fact. Mm-hmm. And it's just worth experimenting with visualizations, with, like, they've seen, I think there's an experiment done where they got like a packet of pills, right? And it says on the pills, placebo, take 3 times a day, right? So the person actually, like, you know that it's a placebo. It was an experiment they did on a group of people. So people knew it was a sugar pill. It said placebo, take 3 times a day, but because it was in the same packet that they would normally have their painkillers in, it had the effects of a painkiller, just because they made it in the same way that if I was to give you paracetamol in one of the little packets and you were to pop it out and take it, even if I told you that's not really paracetamol, it probably would have the same effects as paracetamol, just because that ritual and that association.
Because you're in that mindset.
Our body starts to go, I need to release painkillers now, and like opioids start to release in the brain because your brain and your body's made that association. But you know, this is an empowering thing. It means that we can use that in such a positive way. You know, like, what are you going to lose by telling yourself affirmations before you go to sleep, by closing your eyes and imagining, using the power of your mind to imagine a cleansing color where your shoulder pain is, and to imagine color just cleaning it out and healing it? Like, what are you going to lose, right? And actually, there's a lot to suggest that things like that, very simple things, just using our mind and our imagination, can actually be very powerful and effective in terms of healing ourselves.
There is a saying, the mind's a very powerful thing, you know. Laura, that's another thing. How come I can switch off completely, like think nothing, yet my husband is like a running nightmare, but he has autism? Does that make it harder?
Yeah, I think it does make it harder, because obviously you have like triggers and your mind operates in a different way. You're more sensitive to the world, but you can work with it. I know you've not got the answer to everything, but how does that work with depression when physically you don't produce enough serotonin? When you do things like hypnosis, it will help you to produce more serotonin. So obviously when you take antidepressants, they're just recycling the serotonin that you already have. So hypnosis, for example, works well with people who are on antidepressants because it helps you to increase it. So when you release a lot of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, or adrenaline. So if you're stressed, that might be your baseline, it might be your normal. They crush serotonin. So I'd be looking at, well, why are you not producing enough serotonin? Because your stress levels are up. So if we can reduce the cortisol and adrenaline, it means you can restore the amount of serotonin you've got, but you can use natural methods to produce more serotonin. We all have it within us.
Mm-hmm. hope that answers your question there. So getting on to you were saying earlier about past life regression. You know, I know quite a few people. What is saying? I'm a walking stress nightmare.
We all are. We live in a very unnatural world. You know what I mean? We're not really meant to be looking at screens late at night. And the best way is to, you know, we need to be outside, be around loved ones.
I've been told in the past, you don't worry about anything. And some people fell out at me because it's you don't worry about anything. Why not? And I've said to them, well, again, if you've got a problem, and you're stressing out about it, you're worried, you go to bed that night, you've not slept, you get up in the morning, you feel like crap, your problem's still there. But you just feel 10 times worse.
Our minds do not know the difference between imagination and reality, right? So if you're walking through the woods and you feel something drop on you and you go like that, right? What happens, right? Your heart rate increases. The tips of your fingers start to tingle. Why? Because you've just released a very powerful hormone called adrenaline, which is having a physical effect on the body. And then you realize what's landed on you is a leaf, right? So your imagination in that moment made your body have a physical reaction. If you're ever in a car and then suddenly, you slam your brakes, okay, but nothing happens, tingling in your finger, your heart rates be up, right? Because you've imagined something. So your body is always responding to your thoughts. And when you think negative thoughts, you release stress and adrenaline hormones, which do have an effect on the body. When you think calming, loving thoughts, you release serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, which calm the body down. So yes, our thoughts have a physiological impact on our body, and we can become addicted to our own negative thinking. Why? Because adrenaline is a stimulating hormone. So whilst it's not nice to feel like that, it stimulates you like nicotine. So we can literally become slaves to our own thoughts. So we can retrain ourselves through journaling. It's not just fluff, thinking positively. It actually shifts you to a completely different part of the mind, the part of the mind that makes logical and rational assessments of situations and people, which means not only will you feel better, you will manage your life better. When we think negatively, we're operating from the primitive mind, which is essentially our monkey brain, which is brilliant when we run into bears and we need to get into a fight. It is not good for managing our day-to-day lives. Why? Because that part of our mind is not the intellectual part of our mind. We switch into the intellectual part of our mind when we think positively. So our thoughts do have an effect on our body.
Scott is genuinely the most laid-back guy ever, and has taught me so much. Oh, thank you, dear.
And that's why you're able to smoke and be healthy, probably, because you're not killing yourself with worrying thoughts,
Yeah, I get it. I think I get it off my dad, but people say, "How can you not worry about that?" Whether it's maybe moving house or whatever it might be. Oh, I've got 5 days to move house. It's fine. You get it done.
And that
you do get it done,
doesn't it?
And what's the point of running about hands in the air? We're all going to die, and going to worry sick and blah blah blah. Because at the end of the day, it will work out, sometimes for the worse, but at the end of the day, it does work out. But you spent all the previous days, hours, sitting stressing and worrying and maybe making yourself ill over it, and you think, why? Why did I spend the last week?
Everyone needs someone like you in the room, because it's infectious. If you have someone that's going, it's going to be fine, it calms other people down. But we bounce off each other. If someone's stressed, someone else gets stressed, and it has a ripple effect.
I've known a few stress pots in my time, especially working in warehouses and that, this deadline, the deadline's Monday, and I know the deadline's Monday, and you're standing watching them thinking, the deadline's Monday, fine, we'll get it done for Monday. So what? But they're bouncing off each other, and they're running about stupid, and their backside's on fire and all the rest. And you think, no, that's just no me. You know what I mean? So it's really past life. We'll get to Loudon eventually, though. Don't worry. Past life regression. Again, I've spoken to a few people on shows about how it works and what have you. How does it work for you? With the hypnosis.
first of all, people come to you and they're like, I was a witch in a past life. Can you take me back there? And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, your mind will take you where your mind needs you to go. So people have premonitions, intuitions about what they think. The reality is, we've lived many lives, and who knows? Like, time is a construct. You could tap into future lives, not just past lives, but your mind will take you where you want to go. So we use a deep state of relaxation to get you relaxed, to activate your memory. And then what we do is we trust the power of the mind and the imagination to take you where you need to go. Your imagination could take you to a million different places. So trust that it's taking you to where you want to go. So if you're an Arab in the desert and it's 3,000 years ago, your mind's taking you there. And then you go with it. And obviously I guide them through the process, and we'll ask questions and move to different stages in their life. And the thing that I find so interesting about doing it is that most people's lives are very ordinary. You know, it's wherever they are, if they're in a castle in France, or like, you know, they're like, it's 3,000 years ago, or they're in, it's what's it called? Ancient Rome, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same themes, which is I'm worried about my health, I'm worried about my children, have I got enough money? Themes of love, you know, it's the same. It's something, there's something very normal about the human condition, and it doesn't matter where we are in history or what lives we're living, it seems to be the same things that come up, which I find quite interesting. And so a lot of the lives that I get are ordinary but very moving, you know, because you touch on the humanness of it. You hear their heartache when someone dies, or their regrets about what they wish they'd done or what they wish they hadn't said. So it's kind of like fleshing out a movie and finding out about the characters and everything.
Have you ever had anybody, good friend Debbie Ison, she does same as yourself, she's been on quite a few times, and I've spoken to her about this as well. You know, you get some people, as you say, the one thing, just what you said to Rebecca, I've spoken to a few people who do remember past lives, as you say, they're always somebody ordinary. I've never spoken to anybody who's came back and says, "Oh, I was Henry VIII, or I was Julius Caesar," or, you know, some
people do.
figure, you know. You do get the fakes.
People identify with archetypes as well. So there's if you've got an obsession with Marilyn Monroe, I would be like, well, what is her archetype? Which is something to do with feminine sexuality and beauty. There's something about your subconscious mind that's really identifying with that. So I would go from a more therapeutic point of like, there's a block there around your own inner feminine sexuality and sensuality, right? Or your glamour, or your voice. There's something about you that wants to perform and be on stage. So we all, when our minds get fixated on things, like I was a witch in a past life, again, or a warrior, that could be something to do with the wounded masculine within you. What is it that you feel you can't fight for, provide, or protect? Why do you identify with a dying warrior? You know, it's not that you might not have been that in a past life, but our minds have funny ways of trying to point us in the direction of things that we are blocked, areas of life that we're blocked in, you know.
Have you ever had anybody remember their own passing?
Oh, yeah, you always take people to a death scene. So when you do a past life, you know, sometimes it can be you do a past life and the first thing I usually get someone to do is I get them to look down at their feet, right? Because it grounds them. And they might have bare feet, they might be on sand, or they might be sitting in a chair, and they might be really old. And if they're really old, I'll ask them a few questions, and then I'll go, can we go back in time a bit? And then we go back in time and another scene will come up. But at the end of the session, you'll always take them to a death scene. And obviously, you know, this is why you need a professional hypnotherapist to do this, because you don't know how that person died. It could be quite distressing for them to relive it. So you need to make sure that you can safely take them through that. But you'll take them through their last dying thoughts, and then just kind of allow them to, because perhaps there's something unresolved within that life that's living in the cellular memory of them in this life, and that's why their mind's taken them there. So you'll find a way of allowing them to peacefully go through that death scene, and then take them kind of into a spirit realm before they come back, where they can contemplate on their life, the things that came up, the people that they want to forgive. They can perhaps even have a conversation with maybe any guides that come in at that point, and then we slowly take them out of hypnosis from there.
Laura says, sorry, had so many. They need to apologise, Doc. So that's, we do appreciate all the questions. Like you see, I've always been drawn to Greyfriars in Edinburgh for years and years.
You've done investigations there?
We have done investigations there before we found out about the band. They're actually banned. So I always emphasise it was before we found out that they're actually banned there.
Right. I wonder why they banned investigations there.
Basically, why it got banned was because it was other teams, teams getting in, and they were because we're quite close with Jamie Kistorfin, who runs City of the Dead tours, and he's based in Greyfriars. He's been in Greyfriars for about 15, 16 years. This guy knows it inside out. And what was happening was teams were getting in, and they were climbing over walls. Right through the middle of Greyfriars, you've got the part of the Loudon wall, which is centuries old. People were climbing over walls.
I've got a confession to make. Whenever I was a teenager in a goth, I would hang out with my friends and drink in Greyfriars. It's obviously been a spot for like decades at teenagers.
It's a spot for drinking and drugs and homeless people.
It's sort of mystical. It's kind of like, I like that graveyard. That was the last time I was in a graveyard, and then the next time I was in a graveyard at night was with you guys.
Which we're going to come to, but there was too much damage getting caused inside Greyfriars with headstones and walls and stuff. So the council introduced a permit scheme. Basically, you to buy a permit to investigate in it, but you still get idiots getting in, climbing and all that kind of to try getting to Covenant's prison, climb over the wall. So the council said, enough's enough. Investigations are banned. They've now got enforcement officers that come round randomly day and night and just check to see if anybody is investigating. Don't get me wrong, there's probably still teams getting in and claiming they've met the Mackenzie poltergeist and that, but
I believe it. Why,
the Mackenzie poltergeist?
I don't think so, no.
No. The Mackenzie poltergeist, Jan Henderson owns City of the Dead tours. And he wrote a book, The Ghost That Haunted Itself, because the Covenanters prison, there is something in the prison, some entity, spirit, whatever you want to call it. There's over 3,000 documented reports of attacks at the Covenanters prison. So Jan Henderson, he wrote a book, The Ghost That Haunted Itself, and it was based on what was happening in the prison. And he had to give this, he decided he wanted to give this entity a name, so he called it the Mackenzie poltergeist. That's where the name comes. It's made up from a book, and you can check that. You can look online for the Jan Henderson. It's not
real.
No.
Oh, okay.
But there's so
out there.
There's no evidence at all. We've had Jamie on the show a few times. We've through Edinburgh a lot of speaking to him. And as Jamie said himself, there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that George Mackenzie still wanders in Greyfriars. And he's been there 15, 16 years, and he's been there day and night. He's never witnessed.
That's no reason to lie. Like, if he saw it, he would talk about it, right? You know what I mean? So
he says he's never seen, nothing's ever happened to him.
Yeah.
In all the years, but so saying I've had this draw to Greyfriars for many years, and it was a few years back. I was talking to a medium, shall we say, whether she was genuine or not, I don't know. And I was telling her, she says, well, that's because you were a soldier in a previous life, and your name was Jeff or Jeffrey, and you're buried in Greyfriars.
Is there a gravestone there with that name?
Well, we've known the chances because there's 492 headstones in Greyfriars.
Wow, you have to go there. You have to find it. That's so interesting. Is that what you like about it? Does it feel familiar? I suppose it wouldn't feel familiar if it's where you died, right? If it was where you were buried, but
that's where that's who I was called. It just feels. How can you put it? It feels like you belong there.
Yeah, so you do. It's a feeling. Yeah.
You've got to. Even before we started PIH, I happened to day trips through to Edinburgh, and I always had to go up, and even if it was 10 minutes, have a wander around and then leave again. And
Yeah.
it's so I could never ever explain it, but this lady
I love
said,
that. I just find that so like, you know.
But checking 492 headstones, it's a bit of a tall order.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would be going around every one of them. I'd want to know because I just think that
don't get me wrong. When we've been through, I have had, any headstones you pass, you do have a wee look, left and right, just in case the name pops up. But it might be true. It might not be true. I don't know. I don't know. But there's always been that kind of pull. But no, the Mackenzie poet, there is something in. I've got my own theory about what's in the Covenanters prison. I think it's one of the former guards that's there.
Yeah.
And he still sees that because obviously the history of the Covenanters, the prison. It's not a very nice history. And I think it's one of the guards, and he still sees this as his territory. And anybody coming in is invading his territory, basically.
He's more aggressive then.
Yeah, there's a place in Scotland called Millport. As a child, I went. As a child, I went. As an adult, I go. But every time I leave, I feel like I belong there.
Yeah, I think follow that intuition. We have memory. We do, and memory like that is a feeling, isn't it? It's not something you think. It's a sense.
Well, you hear countless stories, about people, especially children. They'll see a photograph or something, that's my granddad, but they'd never met their granddad.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, interestingly, like people ask me, can children be hypnotized? And no, because children are in a theta brainwave state from right up till they're 7. In other words, children are always in a state of hypnosis, right? Their minds are completely open. Their subconscious minds are open. They haven't developed their left prefrontal cortex. And because I believe that the subconscious is where we have access to other realms, I think that's why children are very open to past life memory, seeing spirits, ghosts, so no, you can't. So be aware of that. Every single day you're hypnotizing your children up till they're 7. Their brains are like sponges taking everything in.
And they absorb it. But I've read about people, go to different towns that have never been, and they can tell, if you go down there and then you turn right, there's a church or it's a great, and they've never ever been there, and they can't explain how they know about this certain town, village, whatever it might be. Think, well, is it because they lived there in a previous life, and wee bits are coming, wee fragments are starting to come back to them. So it's, subconsciously kind of thing.
I sort of trust, it's called intuition. Trust your gut, trust your feelings, and like go and see a past life regressionist, because you'd be surprised what might come up for you,
You're getting me. You've got a fly or a butterfly or something.
Flying me. I'm sorry.
I didn't say sorry. I keep seeing it floating by,
I know. I'll try and bat it away next time it comes.
But I want to get you back on for the hypnosis, because I think there's a lot more. But I'm going to move on to Loudon.
Yeah.
Your first ever paranormal investigation.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. I didn't expect it to be fun. I was like, it's going to be really scary, but it was actually quite fun, I
watched your TikTok that you made before. You must have been leaving the house or something, because you were telling people.
Yeah, that's right. I put up lots of little stories. I was like vlogging it as we went along.
And that I don't know what to expect and stuff like that. So how did you feel it went? What was your kind of thoughts on it before?
I think before I came, I just had no idea. I was like, are we just going to be sitting waiting for ghosts? Is it going to be really scary? Or is it, I had no idea. And actually I felt, probably because of you guys, I felt quite relaxed. I was like, actually, it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't boring either. It was really like exciting kind of. And I think because you have all of the equipment, so you're getting signals constantly, and that just catches the thought, it intrigues you. It's like, why is the K2 flashing up? There's someone there and trying to talk to it. It was an investigation. It was stimulating. But when we went to the graveyard, I find that I was more like, oh God, we're out in the open, it's dark, and you can feel spirits, right? Like we were definitely around a lot of spirits in that barn. I kind of wish I'd been a little bit more like, I don't know, like present. I think because we were all chatting and it was still light and I was quite excited and hyper. Actually, I wish I'd grounded myself a bit more and been a bit more tuned into that, because I think that those you talk about spirits draining your energy. I think that's where it happened, was in that barn, because I think you're all around us, and because I wasn't focused and present, because the next day I felt completely drained. Like, I didn't expect.
You see, that happening, it's a common thing. It's a paranormal hangover, they call it,
and it feels like an actual hangover, like a proper hangover. It's not like,
it does, because what tends to happen is, spirit also, spirit uses whatever energy it can find to communicate with us. And because people are so focused on their investigation, they're unaware that spirit's taking energy from them.
Yeah.
So they actually don't realise it.
You're right, because I wasn't focused. It was, I think that's my intuition was telling me that the next day, because like you guys said to me, oh, you'll feel, it's a paranormal, you'll feel rough. And I was like, all right, kind of thought I'll feel rough. I felt so, like, I had a headache. I couldn't sleep, but I really wanted to sleep. And that, my gums, like my mouth started bleeding in the morning, like that, like almost like something was being sucked out of me. I felt so drained the whole day. And so I think, obviously you guys don't do protection rituals or anything. I think if I was to do it again, I know what it is now, so I wouldn't be all giddy and excited. I think it'd be a bit more like, right, I want to focus, I want to be present, and maybe just be a bit more tuned into the fact that, well, you are with people from the afterlife, and maybe try and be like tuned into that, a bit more respectful, rather than all like, oh, we're ghost hunting. You guys are calm. I wasn't. I was buzzing about or zinging, like,
But that's not, that was your first ever investigation. I don't know, had you watched any of the ghost shows or anything prior to?
Of course I do. I love them. I was so excited to actually be part of it. But I think my excitement got the better of me, because it maybe didn't make me so present. And then every time something happened, it was like, I think it, and I also think probably I got the sense that the spirits as well, they're like, we're not performing for you. You know what I mean? So if you're sort of jumping about in that excited energy, they feel energy, right? So they can feel that from you. And I think if you're actually very tuned and very respectful, and you're like, I'm just here, I want to get to know you, and you're calm, I think they're going to be more open, kind of communicating with you,
No, exactly, because we've been doing Loudon for, I was talking to Barry John that the other night, but we've been doing Loudon near enough 4 years now. We've been back and forward to Loudon, and it took us the best. As I was saying about the ghost shows, these guys go into a mansion and bang, tables are flying in within 5 minutes and all that bollocks. This to happen with that. We were there the best part of a year before we started to really get any. We'd got cat ball flashes and the odd bits and pieces there.
Oh, I love that. That's such a big thing when you're doing an investigation.
It is.
Cat ball flashes, like, that's where the magic is, and I guess it's worth waiting for those moments.
A lot of people, I'll come with that. I see, we were the best part of a year before we started to get any real evidence, EVPs, etc. Because it takes spirit time to get used to you. They're just people, same as us, And as I've said many a time, it's when you get into a new job or a new crowd, people take time to get to know you.
Yeah.
They're standoffish, they don't know you, you're a stranger, But through time, the more they see you, all right, I remember Rebecca, she's okay, we'll go and talk to her. Spirit's the exact same. So we were the best part of a year before we got any real EVPs, and we started to get our names through for EVPs,
Yeah, I love that. Probably as well that maybe the more and more you went, the more you just get something connected in you guys, like, because you guys were all so calm, it's like very obvious that you're pros and you do it all the time.
Oh, I know.
Not even remotely spooked. I was like, "What's wrong with you guys? We're in a graveyard." So
But you see, that was your first investigation, and I say, obviously, you watched the ghost shows, so
I've
you know
watched ghost
you're
shows.
going into a graveyard at night. It's not your usual, and I'm not saying we spend every night in a graveyard, but it's not your usual environment, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. You know,
No,
that's
it's not. I don't hang out.
totally new to you. You're like that, and let's face it, you're in a graveyard at night time with people you've just met.
No.
You know, we're all normal.
I love walking around graveyards during the day. Like they feel peaceful and calm. But it's a totally different feeling at night.
But that's where that's where the mind comes.
You think so?
Mind.
I feel like you can. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is.
It's the mind.
Like it feels peaceful, and then I'm going, "Oh, I can feel something at night." But maybe it's the same thing I'm feeling. It's still an energy. It's just that it's dark, right?
It's the same with investigating. A lot of teams investigate at night. We do as well, for two reasons. One, because there's less people about, there's less contamination for noise and traffic or whatever. And the second, it adds a little bit of atmosphere.
Yeah.
But we've done many investigations during the day and had plenty of activity at Loudon and other locations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting into the graveyard at night. It's the same place as it is during the day. It's just it's people's minds that do it.
Yeah.
They remember horror films and.
Do you not think that you're more likely to get ghosts at night? Like that is a good point, because I had ghost things happen to me, like paranormal experience happen during the day. So why is it that investigations always happen at night, and all these ghost shows, they are always at night, aren't they? Like I'd never thought about that before.
They do them at night because I say, one, there's less noise contamination and stuff, and there's less people. We've been at Loudon during the day, and there's been people. It's quite a popular place for horses and just walkers, basically. But at night time, we don't get any of that. You know, they're all away. So that's really noise contamination and atmosphere. But no, a lot of people were under the impression, oh, ghosts only come out at night. You know, see, bollocks. No, they don't. They're there all the time.
Yeah, but I know I've had many ghostly experiences that have been during the day. But it's usually when there's no one around. So I guess at night there aren't people around. You know, it's usually like you're in a quiet place and then something strange.
The thing is, at night time, you're more likely to notice it.
Yeah, that's
than you are during the day, because
maybe
there's less distraction.
More suggestible to it at night as well.
Because at night time you're there for a specific reason, and you're kind of more open to it. And it's like the more investigations you do, I've always said there's a barrier, you know, and as soon as you start investigating, you let that barrier down a bit. And the more you investigate, the more the barrier comes, and spirit's right on the other side of the barrier. And the more that barrier comes down, the more spirit senses that, and the more likely they are to communicate with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's basically it is. You know, you watch these ghost shows.
Ouija boards or anything? Is that not your?
No, we don't. I've used the Ouija board once. That was a couple of years ago. It was a team we were very close with, GSI. And it started off as a dare, because Sarah and I were doing an investigate with them in Nottingham Forest, Sherwood Forest in Nottingham. And John, one of the founders, he hates iron brew. I know, he's English. What can I say? And we'd never been near the Ouija board. So John and I made a kind of, it started off as a joke. And I said, right, you drink a can of iron brew and I'll try the Ouija board. So we went down and I took iron brew, and he stood there and he drank the iron brew. He didn't like it, but however.
You got the short straw. I'm sorry. Drinking a can of juice versus like.
Oh, he detests it. He absolutely, Sarah will tell you, Laura will tell you. He absolutely hates it. But I said, well, you drink a full can in front of us and I'll do the Ouija board. So he did it. And I did the Ouija board. His other co-founder's called Ralph. He's been doing the Ouija board for about 30 plus years, you know. I says, I'll only do it with somebody that I trust totally. And then know, because we don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. And so I did it with Ralph, but I actually found it quite relaxing. That might sound nuts, but I said that to John.
I think Ouija boards have got a really bad reputation, but then I know people that have had really profound conversations with spirits using Ouija boards.
Well, it started off as a children's toy, don't forget.
And yeah, did it?
It did. It was actually invented as a kind of children's toy. And then
Wow.
the paranormal field got the idea.
Why
Wait
is
a
it
minute.
like people become very religious? People really don't like it. It's like devil worshipping and all that.
That's a Hollywood influence on it.
Yeah.
It's been very Hollywoodized, as you say. But as it started off as a children's toy, and then, you know, the paranormal field kind of got windy and thought, well, we could maybe try that. But you do get people that have a couple of cans of beer on a Friday, they'll grab a Ouija board, they've watched a film, they'll grab a Ouija board, expecting to pull up Satan or a demon or, you know, some rubbish with that. We don't touch them. No offence to anybody who does. You know, we do know teams that use them quite a bit, but we don't know enough about them. So that's how we don't get near them, basically. And to me, that's the safest bit. But the investigation at Loudon that night, I think you were just a stranger to them. They didn't know you.
Well, they thought I was a witch, didn't they?
Aye, the witch thing came through.
First time I've had people call me a witch in this life from people who are alive. You know,
it might have been the hair or whatever. You don't know.
Yeah,
you know.
I literally had a guy once think that I was a witch because I've got like tarot cards and stuff. So I'm like, oh well, if he thought I was a witch and now ghosts are saying maybe there's something in it. You know?
Or the other side is you might have reminded them of somebody.
Yeah, but then there's good witches, aren't there? You know, like we found witches. They were just the natives of the land that were interested in herb medicine, and you know, it wasn't all. But like, obviously, there was a campaign that they're evil, they're going to hurt you, and that's why these ghosts and stuff like that, they come from a time where witches were really feared. So, you know,
I think as soon as you hear the word witch, you automatically, and I blame Hollywood. You know.
I blame history. I blame the men that massacred the women and called them witches. All they were was wise women that were probably quite intuitive, psychic, used alternative medicines, knew the land, plants. You know, like you've got to remember is that, you know how you have like Native Americans and Aborigines, like witches were the native women. They were massacred by the Romans, and then later, you know, these were our indigenous tribes and our rituals and the things that we learned about how to work with the land. And
it was James the First.
It's all bad, and it's not, you know.
It's no bad, but it was James the First that kicked it off here. You know, because he was bringing over his bride Catherine from Norway, and there was a storm at sea when they were coming over this. And he blamed witches, so he wrote a book on it. And he was absolutely terrified and paranoid about witches and witchcraft, and that's what sort of kicked the whole.
Because we're afraid of feminine power, because women are powerful. Like, where does life start? In our womb. We are literally the portal to the cosmos, to the gods. It's about shutting down female power. Women's bodies are very, very powerful, and we are intuitive, and we're all magic. Women all have a witch in them. Witch means to be wise. It was about we don't want powerful women, because why not men? Why weren't they afraid of magic men? You know, they didn't get massacred and stoned and burned.
The men were put on trial, not as many as women, you know, but there were a percentage of men were put on trial. But the trouble with the witch trials was it turned into a way for people to get rid of people. You know, a love rival, land rival, somebody you didn't like. Sorry?
You've seen The Crucible?
Aye, long time ago.
Yeah. Because that's obviously all about the hysteria. Everyone thinks everyone's a witch, and you end up killing everyone, you know.
You know, it's if there was a woman in the village that you liked, but some other guy was, you know, ahead of you, then, you know, or maybe there was a woman who liked a guy and there was another woman, she's a witch. And that's all that was needed back, you know, especially the 1600s, early 1700s, 1730, 33. witch trials started to die out because King Charles started to think, well, maybe these people aren't witches. So he kind of, and so society started thinking, well, maybe the king's right. And so the witch trials started to die out. And after about 1733, 35 on, there was no witch trials.
Yeah.
Because the king had woke up. The only place in the UK that never saw a witch trial was Wales, simply because they didn't know how to conduct witch trials. So they kind of stayed away from it. The judges in Wales kind of stayed away for the whole thing. But it was actually King Charles turned and he kind of woke up and thought, maybe we've got this all wrong here. And they died out. But no, the witch trials we've covered all the witch trials in the UK. But no, they thought you were a witch. So you might have reminded them of somebody that they've known.
Do you think they meant it? I thought they were just doing that to sort of provoke me, I don't know. Or
it might just have been a word. You do get random words through. We were using the spirit talker, and you do get the odd random word. So
they said she's trying to harm you. She's a witch. They were warning you guys against me.
So we need to watch out for you.
You need to watch out for me.
Well, I mean, see, we've been doing Loudon for about 4 years, and we have never came across a negative spirit. We've been told to, Sarah and that's been told to F off, which we told you about, but you get that.
They F off and die, they're polite.
They might just be having a bad day or whatever, but it's when people go in and start saying, there's demons here and it's evil here. No, there's not. I mean, we're no experts in Loudon, but I think we know enough. That's what I said home to us, to say that we've never encountered anything negative or evil.
You're obviously welcome there, and there's probably like good spirits that protect spirits or whatever,
It's funny you say that because, as we explained on the night, there was a certain period of time where the girls would not get down the back of the yard where we ended up. But then there came a time where the atmosphere you'd need to have been there to know, to experience it. The atmosphere shifted, and it was never medicine before. It was one of these kind of curious atmospheres, I'm watching you because I don't know who you are. But then it kind of shifted as if to say, well, we know who you are now. So you're welcome, come in.
Oh.
Kind of thing. And
you got our trust. I mean, fair enough. You know what I mean? You're coming onto their territory, like.
I mean, Laura and Sarah used to be there, and then one night I took Laura down to Loudon and took her to the back. It was dark, and I left her. I buggered off. I was in the car in the car park. I wasn't at Tesco or anything like that. I was in the car outside the car park, and she did a sort of 20-minute stint herself.
Yeah.
Down at the back of the Dempster plot, and after that, she was totally fine with the place.
Yeah.
It's just getting over that
initial
apprehension. There's nothing negative.
You guys did it for a long time, and you're,
Well, we're 5 years this year. So how did the real thing for you compare to what you're seeing on telly?
I think it makes you. I think it's realizing the work that goes into it as well. I think you see like the highlights, don't you, on the telly? And then when you're actually there, it's like, there's so much set up, and then you have to sit down and you actually investigate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get the thermometers out and check things. And then at one point we were using, that it's an investigation, like that there, and the fact that afterwards you guys do all this work afterwards to go through all the sounds and all the messages and like,
it does take I've seen us spending maybe a full week,
it's a huge, it's the wired investigation. It's a proper investigation.
Well, that's the difference. Some people say, I don't like the word ghost hunting. I was talking to Barry John the other night with this. He uses the word ghost hunting, but it's a word I've always hated.
Oh, because, sorry, yeah.
It makes you feel like you're going out with a big net and a torch. To hunt, I'm going to catch.
It's an investigation.
This net tonight, whereas you're not going to, capture a spirit, you know, and bring them home and keep them in a box or something. You know, you're actually going out to try and talk to them. Not that you want to be the super team or anything, but you want to go, because people say to us, why do you do the same location time and time again? You know, does it not get boring? We say, no, but we do random locations as a one-off. But as I've said to them, if you keep going back to that one location, spirit gets to know you. They get to build a trust with you. And so you're more liable. You're not going to get all the answers, you know, about life after death. You never get them. But you build up a kind of repertoire with them. They know you. They recognise you. And it could take years, but you keep getting a wee bits and pieces.
That's the thing as well. So I think you kind of want to see things and senses, but actually when I was there, it was that I really want to communicate, you know, it's like, I want to hear what they've got to say. Like, why are they here? And, you know, and that was really like something you couldn't quite capture. It was when they were communicating. It was like, it was coming in, you know, they were coming.
Because what happens sometimes as well, you'll get numerous spirits, and it's like, it's with that film with Ricky Gervais in it. I don't know if you've seen it, when he dies, and I think he's a dentist that he dies, but then all of a sudden...
Is that a TV series or a film? I can't remember.
A film, he can see something happens to him.
Yeah.
But he recovers, and then all of a sudden all the spirits can see him, and he's inundated with spirits, basically. It's something similar to that. You know, that night we were there, the night we were there with Rosie as well, we knew there was multiple spirits there, and it's as if they're all wanting to talk at the same time. You know, so you're maybe getting one word off.
Or they're all talking with each other as well.
They're talking to each other, and this is what you're hearing. You can't
quite get the words in.
You know, so that's how it takes. You need a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time to sit and, you know, go through the EVPs. But even people expect you.
Boring. That was the other thing. So I did think, well, if you're waiting for a tiny bit of motion, is it going to be boring? But it was never boring. It always it feels very active. Like it is exciting. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, right, okay, when's this ghost going to come along at all? Even though it is very slow and it takes time, there's something, you know, there's something that feels very active and like how quickly did that night go? Like, remember before we knew, it was like,
I can't remember.
Time, you know.
I can't remember the time we ended up going to the cup, but it was quite late. But that's the thing. A lot of people, I've got another thing with you, Laura, which I'll stick on my thing. A lot of people go to investigations and they expect to get answers right away. You know, they expect to walk in the door and spirit's going to be sitting there ready, you know, like, come on, I'll tell you what you want. You know, it doesn't, and it annoys us because it doesn't work like that, as you've seen, Rebecca. It doesn't work like that. Spirit will tell you in their own time. You know, and you might not get the answers to questions you have, you know, or you might, it's just a game of you just don't know. That's why some people do their first investigation. I'll say to them, don't expect anything.
Yeah.
You know, don't go in there with this big, you know, build up, well, I'm going to meet spirits tonight, and because you're setting yourself up for disappointment, possibly. Just go and see.
Remember that fan knocked over?
Well, you see, that was freaky. We can't explain that.
Well, that was obviously something. I mean, that wasn't an accident, was it?
That was, and it was right after Sarah said, if you want us to leave, light up the light or something, wasn't it? When the fan came out. So it was right after. So,
that was a strong sign to get.
Somebody said in the comments that was an angry spirit, but it could just have been that spirit's way of communicating. They knew,
we were also
realized
talking quite a lot. Do you remember at that point we were all chatting quite a lot, and it was almost like enough, you know, like knocked down, you know.
Aye, that is I mean, spirit will get frustrated as well. You know, if we're there and we're invested, we're asking them something, but then we start yakking to each other. And they, you know, spirit will be like that. I thought they came to talk to us, but they're talking amongst themselves. You know, maybe know the exact words, but no doubt they'll get frustrated as well. But that heater, we don't have any answers to that because that, you know, that moved entirely on its own. Nobody was near it, and we couldn't explain it. But that's the kind of thing that gives you that wee buzz when you get something like that. Some folk would run out the door. Oh my God, the heater moved. I'm heading for the car, sort of thing. But that's when you need to stay and you need to keep going, because that's somebody made themselves known to you or to us, you know. And there's a reason for it. It's like when we did it with Rosie and Emma, we got 2 new names. We got a Charlotte or Lottie who wanted to speak to Laura, and we got a gentleman called Will. So that's 2 names that we're going to follow up on.
Was Lottie, she like a little girl, or is she like an adult?
Well, it was Rosie that picked up on her at first, and for what she was saying, that she was appearing, she was presenting herself as, I think it was 13 years old.
Gosh.
But she actually passed when, was it 25 or something? It was when she was about 25 is when she actually passed.
She showed up as a 13, that's really interesting.
But Rosie was saying that she was showing herself as a 13. And there is the theory that when we pass, we can go back to that stage in life that we were most happy, whether it's with our parents or whatever. There is that theory as well, but that's just another branch on the tree, basically. But Laura caught that in an EVP. So this lady or girl wanted to talk to Laura. But the interesting thing was that this lady was inside the Dempster plot, and usually James Dempster doesn't like anybody in there because that's where his family is. A little girl of 13, but she was older, but she remembers being happy as being when she was.
There you go. So maybe that's what it was then.
So this is a new name for us to investigate. You know, Mayor.
That's why it's worth having patience, right, and going to the same place, because then these things, and you can go back and you know the names of people, you can continue to try and build up a relationship with them.
I mean, we might not get Lottie again, and we might not get Will, or we might get her, 10 investigations down the line. She might decide to appear again. She might not be, we might get back next time and she's not there. Or it may be another year or something before we get Lottie again, or Will even. But that's what makes it so fun. You just don't know.
Yeah.
It's Laura reminded her of her mum. That's why she wanted to talk to Laura. So would you say you've got the paranormal bug now?
Definitely. I feel part of it now. I'm like, I'm not just watching it on the telly. I'm like, I feel behind the scenes. Like not just doing it with you, but also hearing all of your like background information and how you do it and everything,
But that's just, I've done a lot of these. I've spoken to a lot of people, and the voice says, once you do it once, you get that bug. You say, right, I want to get back out. I want to get back out and do it again. When can I get back out?
I want to protect myself, though. I know you guys aren't into that, but I think I want to do like a little 5-minute meditation and just,
So we don't bother with that. We used to.
I don't want to say this because it's negative, but I had a few unfortunate things happen to me that week. And obviously I'm superstitious and I'm like, I know it's not to do with that, but I've put 2 and 2 together in my mind now. And I'm like.
But you do, that's.
I got unlucky afterwards,
Feel free to join us anytime, Rebecca. You are a breath of fresh air.
As are you, Laura, and everyone, the whole team, Sarah, you.
Well, thank you, dear. But I mean, as you say, you had quite a bad week, following the investigation. But that's just natural for you.
Such a high. That was a highlight. That was one of the highlights of my year. And I'm not just saying that. It was such a unique, different thing to do on a Saturday night. It was also a beautiful night. And just the farm and the history, and then like having conversations with spirits. It was like an amazing, I'm so grateful that you guys brought me, and I won't forget it. It's just that it was a really bad week after that. I'm so
that's normal. It was your first investigation.
The next day, I felt like I didn't expect to feel so rough the next day. And, so I'm going to build myself up again. It's not the ghost, it was more the kind of superstitious side of like they didn't like me, and then I had like this really unlucky week the next week, you
need to get rid of the superstitions, because see, there's nothing negative at Loudon. There's nothing.
You don't think spirits can like jinx your energy and then bad things happen, though?
the spirits we've encountered, and now we're no experts, as I say, nobody is, but we've been doing it 4 years now, and we've never had anything bad or negative happen after investigating at Loudon.
Yeah.
You know, we've had hangovers, some have lasted a day or two, but that's a global thing, basically.
Well, clearly not, because look at you guys have like a good, happy life. You're getting married. It's not like,
You get that, but, you can do investigations and the next day you've got a spring in your step and you're totally fine.
Yeah. No, I do know it's probably not connected.
But I mean, your kind of unfortunate week, shall we say? I think I was just,
No, I think I'll tell you one day, but maybe off YouTube what happened.
I know, wouldn't you don't want to put in your personal business or YouTube. But I think
anymore unlucky.
It was just bad timing.
Yeah. No, it was. But I had such a great time. It was an amazing experience, and I do want to do it again. I do want to do it again.
Well, the more you do it, the more spirit will come forward to you.
Yeah. And I think the more relaxed I'll be next time to sort of know what I'm expecting. I was really hyper last time, so.
Aye, so the next time we just, we have EVPs. One time Sarah wasn't there, and we got clear EVP saying, "Where's Sarah?"
Oh wow, that's amazing.
I can't remember why she wasn't there, but where's Sarah? Laura's name's been mentioned, and my name comes up quite a lot.
Oh, that kind of gives me chills. They say, yeah.
We'll get EVPs. You with me?
Was that not when you went with Rosie after Edinburgh and I was too sore?
Aye, we'd been to Edinburgh prior to going there, and we went with Rosie that night. Sarah was a bit on the sore side, so that's when we went, and that's when we go to where's Sarah. There's a few times I'll say to them, I was up at the farm.
Yeah.
And with the DVP, it's always a woman that says, Scott was up at the house. He's been up at the farm.
Yeah.
So they're standing there, and they do remember. I see my name comes through quite. I even my surname came through once as well. Rosie says, "Can you tell me Scott's second name?" And it came through Matthewson.
No way! Oh my God, that's wild. That's wild.
We can't explain that how spirit would, because we never use our surnames. We always say, "My name's Scott. This is Laura, Sarah." But the spirit came through. You quite good.
I guess that's the power in going to the same place, isn't it?
So I mean, the more you go, the more they'll get used to you.
Yeah,
you'll get used to them. It's just with building a new friendship, basically. At the end of the day, I mean, I know there's a lot of scientific stuff people do with spirit and all the rest of it, and that's not our bag. We don't, because we believe at the end of the day, spirit is just basic and simple. So when I say simple, I don't mean thick. I mean just basic.
Yeah, it's just
people to people.
Don't overcomplicate it, kind of thing.
Aye, but when you start to bring, I had a guy, Matthew Hopkins. His name was one of Debbie Ison's pals. He's right into his sciencey side, and I was saying to him, at the end of it, but he says, no, take science out there, just put it all aside and just look at it basically. It's one person talking to another or to a group of people. That's all it is, except they're on a different plane.
Yeah, I got that from you guys though, because like you're very like just the way you just are yourselves, the way that you talk to them. It's not, and I think probably the spirits feel that, like you're authentic, you're very real, you're yourself. You talk to them the way that you talk to me. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. Because I've watched investigations on YouTube and stuff. People going to say, "Are you male or female? Can you tell me your name? Can you tell me what year you were born?"
Yeah.
And spirit's probably sitting there saying, "Oh."
Yeah. They just want a real conversation.
The spirit just wants to talk to you. So if you go in and say, "My name's Scott. I was up at the house yesterday. It's been a while since we've been here, but we're back again tonight." That you have more chance of them connecting with you because you're showing them that you're just a normal person who is laid back and wants to chat. So the next time you come out with us, you're going to say, "Hi, remember me? I'm Rebecca.
relax.
I'm back again. I've been busy for a while. That's how I've not been there.
Yeah.
Some folk might think you're talking load of crap, but it works.
It does work.
You know, you do. It might not work right away. It might take an hour. It might take.
Comfortable talking like that as well, because I felt like when I was talking to the ghosts, I didn't feel like myself. I was kind of, are you okay? Like I think it maybe just takes a moment to find your natural rhythm and voice when you're talking to something that you can't see, you know, that but you know's there.
And you know, I'm watching the television. I'm just going to wrap up in a wee minute. But when you, as you were saying, you know, when you're saying, "Are you okay?" Who's to say the spirit's still standing there that look like this?
Yeah.
Listen to the way this she's talking. Come in, listen to this. You know, I'm not answering her.
Yeah.
Listen to that. You know.
Yeah. Well, because like you said, it's like if you were to do that to a person, like, are you okay? Like,
imagine somebody coming into, you know, your work, Rebecca, or something, coming up to you saying, "Are you okay?" You'd be like that.
Are you male? Are you female?
You'd be like that. What the?
But it's hard. You guys are really natural. You're natural. I don't feel that natural. I'm like, hello.
That was your first investigation. Do you know, I mean, our first couple of investigations were a mess, basically, you know, because we'd never done it. And I think you watch all these ghost shows and stuff, so you think that's the right way to do it.
You think that's how you talk.
You know, right, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And you go, and you end up making a bollock of yourself, basically. But through time, and I say, none of us are experts, you know, we just go.
You are experts. You know what you're talking about.
You see,
you're very experienced. And you are experts.
There's no such thing as an expert in the paranormal. You can have more experience.
You guys know a lot more than me about this stuff.
That's what I mean. You know, I've had this discussion many a time. You can have more experience than somebody. But at the end of the day, you could have a team that's been doing it for 20 years, and then you've got a little guy who's been doing it for 2 weeks. And they both go out investigating. And this little guy gets more than this team. It's not because he's a better investigator. It's because spirit maybe likes him better than they like Dave.
Yeah, but you've built up knowledge. So I guess you're right.
You do.
You can't determine if spirit's going to come to you, but you have built up wisdom and knowledge and expertise in what you do. You know?
I totally agree with that, but it's what everything in life.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, truck driving. You know, I drove trucks for 20 years, so you can see I'm a better driver than somebody's just learned to drive a truck for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you an expert, it's just you've got more experience, and we're all learning. All teams learn. This is a good thing with doing these shows as well, because you pick up bits and pieces, you pick up tips, you pick up advice, maybe things you've no thought of.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a quick example involves like cat balls. We used to put cat balls down and can never get them to sit a piece of a drawer over it. And I says to David from Spig, bloody cat balls, how do you get them to sit still? David says, put them in a glass. Something plain and simple. He says, get a glass, put the ball inside the glass, and the ball will not move. It'll still work. It'll still go off.
I'm going to try that.
But, you know, and so you get bits and pieces. When we first started, as I said, there was TV show. I was in the habit. I was asking like 20 questions a minute, blah blah blah. And somebody says to me, "You need to slow down. You need to give spirit that gap, that time to answer. They might not answer right away, but you need to ask a question, leave a gap, give them a chance to speak up as you would somebody in the physical, and then maybe ask it. I don't know why. True enough.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're constantly learning, and everybody learns off each other with tips, and you know. But we've got a lot of experience. Which, you know, the more you come out, the more you gather as well. It's what everything in spirit and in physical.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think that makes sense.
It does.
But I'll keep a hold of you after we come off, so don't go anywhere. But just before we wind up, where can people find you if they're looking for you, if they're wanting?
I'm on Instagram as Rebecca Jackson Hypnosis, and I'm on TikTok as Rebecca Jackson Hypnosis. And I'm on YouTube as Rebecca Jackson Hypnotist as well. So there you go.
So there you go, folks. I keep this for 5 years and I still keep pointing the other way. Go and give her a look up. Rebecca Jackson Hypnosis on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. She's not on Facebook yet, but you know, who knows? She might end up on Facebook. I don't know if she likes it or not, but you know.
Join the club, shouldn't I?
Well, if you want to,
that one.
That's where it's a Facebook group we've got, so you know.
I see. Yeah.
That's how you can't find us on Facebook because you're not on Facebook.
Oh, I know. I've never had Facebook. That's my never have I ever. I'm like, I've never have I ever had Facebook.
See, I've got my own Facebook.
I'm like stubborn about
it.
I'm never gonna have it.
But I only use Facebook for Paranormal and Formula One and Elvis.
No, I mean it's amazing. Like there's such a plus that comes with all social media. There's obviously a dark side. We all know about the dark side, but look at this. Like we've connected. Like I never in a million years would have thought I would be invited on a paranormal investigation. I'm never going to forget that experience. It was so unique, so interesting. I've met you. I've made new friends. Like power of social media. Like there's lots of positives that can come out of it as well.
Oh, there is. This is something we've spoken about many times. You know, I mean, we're from Kilmarnock. Well, I'm originally from Glasgow, but we're from Kilmarnock. And we're not a big team or anything like that. And the amount of people that we spoke to, we just doing this, the amount of people we've met, we just doing this is unbelievable. I mean, we know people kind of all over the world, and you know, film stars, movie directors, you know.
Wow. Because people, everyone loves the paranormal. It's never, it's people.
That's
so
it.
In it, you know.
It's surprising just how many people are into the paranormal. Some would admit it because of that sort of certain stigma that goes with it. You know, they think we're all
they'll watch it in the privacy of their home on YouTube or on TikTok. Do you see what I mean? Like,
but they'll not come out and say, "Oh, I love the paranormal," or I like it, you know, because they're scared in case it gets slagged off. But the power of social media, because I mean, we started at the wrong time, but the right time. We started just before the pandemic hit. We only had a couple of investigations, then we were into lockdown. So, you know, we were sitting there thinking, right, well, what can we do? We can't go anywhere. And so we thought, well, why don't we just start talking to people? We hadn't done any podcasts in our life. And thought, well, everybody's stuck at home. Why don't we just... So I started looking on Facebook. Contacting teams and say, I will come on, have a chat, and you know, we've done over 500 of these now. And the amount, as you say, the amount of people we have met for, you know, teams, paranormal teams, authors, historians, directors. We're close friends. We're doing a documentary for them next month. CIA Entertainment, a film company in America. You know, and it sounds both.
I mean, you've got to put yourself out there. Like, use technology or it will use you. But it's like, if you never know what's going to come if you put yourself on a platform, you know.
You don't know, and you've got to just, you know. I mean, it sounds big-headed. It's not
big-headed. You're sharing something that you're sharing something that's interesting and of intrigue. You know, you're sharing something with other people, and it's not like you said. It's a lot of work. You spend a week, like, exploring all of the footage that you've got and bringing it together so that you can share that experience with people, which is a gift, you know.
I was kind of like behind the scenes sort of. A lot of people don't realise what goes into. A lot of people just think it's a case of you walk into a graveyard and then investigate and go home, lights out, you know, and then. But they don't realise what sort of goes into it. But no, if you're going to put yourself out on a platform, then just go for it, you know. And because I mean, some of the guests we've had on, people says to me, how did you manage to get him? How did you manage to get her? I said, well, I just asked them. I found them on Facebook. I mean, last year I don't know if you watched the Saw films or no.
No. But
we had the sort of second biggest star for the Saw films on last year. You know, folks say, how did you manage to get him? You know.
Oh, but the Saw films. Oh my God, I haven't seen them, but that is like
Well, we Costas Mandalore, who plays Detective Hawk.
Yeah, sorry.
He's kind of like Jigsaw's apprentice, basically. But people are saying, you know, Patty Negri, folk like that. How do you get these people? So we just go ahead and ask them. Just find them and hunt them down and Facebook, mail them and ask them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing, you can message anyone.
And basically, we've never, to date, as far as we've never had anybody say, no, I don't want to come on. You know, and again, it's just through social media. That's how,
it's such a unique thing. People like it.
Just one guy.
You what?
Just one guy, but that's because his wife didn't speak English.
I would one guy says no because his wife didn't speak English.
Right.
But you know, but no, we love what we do, and we're going to keep doing it. And but see, we'll wind it up there. I do this all the time. I try and wind up a show about 4 or 5 times, you know, and then something else pops in. I get into trouble for it sometimes, actually. You know, there was one night I think it was like 6 attempts, but then something else pops into the head. Yeah, right, okay. But what I'll say, I'll keep a hold of you after we come off. So get this lady a look up, and you will be seeing her in future out with us on investigations. Might even let her lead one.
Oh no, I have to get my authentic voice going in.
Just talk your normal.
I'll just talk the way I'm talking to you now.
That's it. That's all you do. Just talk normally and say hello and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, don't go for the scientific and the Hollywood kind of, are you there? Are you male or female? Because it's better to just say, you know, excuse the French, fuck off.
Yeah.
We can swear now because it's after 10 o'clock.
Hey!
You know, basically, no. But we're going to wind it up there, folks. So a big thanks to Rebecca. We'll be seeing her again. And that's us too. We're back on Sunday. Oh, we're doing a road trip on Saturday. Might do a wee live or two, depends on we might get a heat wave actually, so hopefully we're off to Ballock and Loudon. But we're on Sunday night with Karina from Argos Reel. You remember Karina because she was a lady who ended up on a rocking horse with a jester's hat and a sword the last time she was on. That was an interesting lady. Nuts, but she's a really nice person, a really nice lady, but she's insane.
I like it. I like the jester look.
You know, that's a rocking horse in the background, and I said it's a joke. You know, just imagine you sitting in that. She says, "Right, give me a minute," and she put a hat on, and she got a sword, and she was sitting on the rocking horse with this on the live.
whatever makes you happy.
Whatever floats your boat, doll. That's fine. Yeah. But she's a really lovely lady, insane but nice. Same as yourself. I'm not saying you're insane, but you know, you're the same as the rest is basically.
I'll need to get my jester hat with me next time too.
I don't. I've only got baseball hats, unfortunately. Right, we're going to wind up definitely this time. So we shall see you at the weekend, folks, either Saturday, if not, it'll be Sunday. All right, so thanks to Rebecca and give her a look up because she knows her stuff. So we'll say good night. All right, cheers. Bye. Bye.